My name is Stephen Stewart, and I will be giving you a short summary of the life of Robert M. Hutchins. And I'll be giving a small insight into his life, who was one of the most influential educators in American history. He contributed many things that are still in practice in today's universities around the world. Just a few that we will address are how he changed the classroom from a lecture hall to more of a discussion room setting. Also admittance based on placement testing, such as the AACT or the SATs. The creation of a 2-year degree, the beginning of generals, and the final exam. My hope is to help you understand that the contributions that Robert made during his career helped to change the face of higher education forever. Robert M. Hutchins was born in Brooklyn, New York, January 17th, 1899, but early in his youth he moved to Oberlin, Ohio, and that is where he would grow up. The move to Oberlin was because his father was a professor of theology at Oberlin College. Robert entered Oberlin at the age of 16, but soon after just beginning his academic career, it was put on hold when he enlisted for the Army in World War I and served as an ambulance driver in Italy, where he earned the Italian medal Croce de Guerra in 1918. Once returned from the war, he went on to further his education at Yale University, where he would graduate with honors in 1921. Robert's career, once started, never slowed. He first taught at Lake Placid School in New York when he was just 22 years old, while still attending Yale Law School, where he graduated again with honors in 1925. He then moved on to become an apprentice professor from 1923 to 1927. He was then named a full professor at Yale Law School at the end of 1927. Just one short year after being named a full professor, he was promoted to dean. Robert was just 29 years old when he was named dean of the law school, but was already starting to influence the education community by raising entrance requirements and setting higher scholastic standards. Just the following year, Robert was named the president of the University of Chicago, which is where he would really make his mark on education. While at the University of Chicago, Robert became the era's most controversial, exciting, and discussed person in all of education. It is here that, in his first years, that Robert would change the collegiate classroom, moving from the typical lecturing to becoming places of independent thought, criticism, debate, and discussion. Robert believed that dialogue, rather than continuous lecture, inspired individuals to learn at a higher level. This we see in our time and in colleges and universities around the world with teachers and professors who still use this style of debate and discussion to manage their classrooms and teach their students. Just after doing this, he then disassembled the football program at Chicago in order to shift the focus more towards the classroom. He did this because he believed that colleges placed too much emphasis on the extracurricular activities. This was an especially controversial move because the University of Chicago actually had a very successful football program. The year before, they had actually won their conference, which would be now the Big Ten. In the late 1930s, Robert introduced what was more than likely his most controversial contribution to the education field. It became known as the Chicago Plan. The Chicago Plan was comprised of the idea that the last 2 years of high school were equal to the first 2 years of college. This included a drastic reorganization that began the collegiate education in the third year of high school and ending in just after the second year of college. The curriculum consisted of 14 courses taken for an entire year, incorporating a basic field of study such as the physical, biological, and social sciences, and the humanities. Students graduated from these courses by passing a comprehensive exam that could be given at any time, whether they were there or not. Now here we find that the innovation of the two-year degree and the final exam can both be attributed to Robert M. Hutchins. We could argue that these two contributions were his greatest, however they were just on a list of many. In 1942, the University of Chicago began awarding the bachelor's degree for the students who had completed this new program, whose admittance was based on placement tests comparable to the SATs and the ACTs that we now take and are required to take in order to gain admittance into colleges and universities around the world today. As expected, most educators and universities reacted to this change with outrage. This new plan was considered ridiculous by most, but as time went on, many other universities began to introduce many of his general courses into their own universities. Here we see that despite the controversy and the unwillingness to consider his plan, they eventually came around and began to consider his ideas and institute them in their own institutions. We also see that this carried through until present day through the general courses that we still all take today in our first year of college. Also, through the idea of placement testing, many colleges and universities require that students take placement tests before gaining admittance into their educational institution. The innovation by Robert of these general courses and placement tests has lasted for more than 65 years and continues to present day. After leaving the University of Chicago, after serving from 1928 to 1945 as president and 1945 to 1951 as chancellor, Robert then moved on to become an associate director of the Ford Foundation, whose purpose is to further the cause of peace. This is rather ironic because when he was president of the University of Chicago, the University of Chicago was the main contributor to the creation of the nuclear bomb. They discovered the first controlled chain reaction, ironically again, under the bleachers of the football team that he had dismantled. He then moved on in 1954 to be named the president of the Fund for the Republic, which stood for the freedom of thought and expression in the United States. Shortly thereafter, Robert started the Center of Study of Democratic Institutions, which was his ideal community of scholars near his home in Santa Barbara, California. Robert also served as chairman of the Board of Educators of the Encyclopedia Britannica from 1943 until he retired in 1974. Robert was married twice. His first marriage to sculptress Maud Phillips McVeigh in 1921 ended in divorce 27 years later in 1948. The couple had 3 daughters, Mary Frances, Jonah, and Clarissa. In 1949, he would remarry to Vesta Sutton Orlick, with whom he lived until his death on May 17, 1977, in Santa Barbara, California.